Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here today with author Anthony Self. We're here to talk about his writing experiences and his new book coming out soon, Birthday Treat. Anthony, thanks for coming by to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me, man. Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's really nice to be able to talk about this book that's been kind of gestating for a while. It's be coming out soon. So yeah, really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So, other than Birthday Treat, and I want to hear more about that. But other than Birthday Treat, what other books have you written? And I understand you work or you contribute to Storgy.com. It's a literary magazine.
Yeah, Storgy. So it's basically story and orgy. Put your hands together. So yeah, no. So this is my like debut novel. This is like the first one that's coming out. But essentially, Storgy was made too many years ago that I can't remember. It was basically me and a friend called Tom, who we wanted to. We're both writers, kind of thing. We wanted to kind of keep the kind of short story alive in that respect, and we kind of would give ourselves like a title each week, and then we gave ourselves like that 1 week to kind of go away, write like 1,000 words, something really short and sweet, and then come back, and then we sort of like discuss it between ourselves and give each other like feedback. And that kind of ballooned to a little bit. We had a kind of core group of writers at one point. So the website it was just in its really kind of infant stage. It was just literally like a bunch of sort of writers that would come together, give each other like maybe a picture or a title, and then next week we'd come back and then we'd read it to each other and everything. And that just, organically sort of like moved into us then getting, like, we had like a lot of people just emailing us going like, oh, can I, I'm a short story writer, can I send my story in? And we were like, yeah, sure, man, like we'll put it out there. And it kind of grew to a kind of point where a couple of years ago, we kind of said, like, why don't we just start publishing, become an independent publisher as well? Because like what we do now is, so on a Monday and a Wednesday, we have a short story that's released on the website. We also review books. We do interviews with authors. And it's just kind of gone from there. Now we're actually sort of publishing. So we've got like 7 books that we've published, some anthologies, some novels, and some exciting stuff coming up. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to join and be in the group of authors that contribute, how would they go about doing that?
Well, that kind of weirdly sort of phased out, and we just then became more of a kind of online literary magazine. So if you like short stories, I think the max word count is 5,000 words. And you want to kind of, we basically promote ourselves as being a platform for artists and creative types kind of thing. Just go onto storgy.com and it's through Submittable. You can send the story through. I'm the head of the short fiction. So the thing is, there is an element that you may not get accepted. Don't I'm holding my hands up. But like, it's a weird one because like, I read so many short stories every day. And it's usually not the kind of case of the caliber of writing is really good from all angles. And if you do get rejection from me, it's not because, your story was bad or anything like that. It might just not be a good fit for the actual website. There's times where I've read like 3 stories in a row that are kind of like of the same ilk in that respect. And sometimes there are technicalities involved and everything like that. But it's send it through and we'll have a look. And in nonfiction as well. Like, it doesn't have to just be fiction. We do nonfiction. A lot of different things.
So when you do have a submitted story that just isn't, just you have criticisms for it, did that take a while to get used to letting someone know or to giving them negative feedback? Is that tough sometimes to do that?
Well, the thing, it's some days are better than the others. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of like, I try to read a couple of short stories every day. And some of the stories are really good. But for whatever reason, there's not that, like, maybe that X factor. And I hate myself for saying that kind of thing. But I've sometimes had problems with, rejecting the story. If I had my choice, I would accept all the stories. But unfortunately, that can't be the case. So I mean, what we basically do is we do have like a generic template that we send as a rejection, because sometimes it just takes too long to come back. Because what I personally like to do is I'd love to be able to kind of come back and give critiques and feedback to every story, but I unfortunately just don't have the time. I have a 9-to-5 job as well. What I basically say though is, if you do want feedback on your story, just ask. I can't 100% guarantee that I'll be able to get to it, but at the same time, I try to go out of my way to do that, just to give, you know, the author some kind of, feedback.
How has that experience changed your writing and the way that you write your own stories and for Birthday Treat? How much has that had an influence on your writing and your?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's I think fundamental, really, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's so, you know, you can read something, you know, when you read a good book and you know it's kind of gripped you from like the first page to the last page and you can't put it down, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, you're just sitting there reading or whatever sort of thing. It's similar to that kind of respect. If I read a short story, I can, with the kind of years of now just reading a lot of short stories, and the short story form is a lot different than a novel in that respect, and I think everyone knows that. But yeah, if the story hasn't kind of captured me by like the first page, and I'm not saying it doesn't have to, you don't have to have like a swanky, or you don't have to have like a kind of first line that kind of like, you know, he came into the room and there were dead people, you know, you don't have to do that. But you know, but if it's in the kind of case of it, if it captures my attention and I'm there and I don't even realize that, you know, 4,000 words have gone, pretty much that's, for me, that's a good story. A lot of people have like different interpretations of what makes a good short story, you know, having a beginning, middle and end, but it's like, you know, the hero journey or whatever it may be, sort of thing. There's loads of stories that I've read that literally nothing happens. It's a character piece, and that's great, that's fantastic. There's loads of stories where the plot has been prevalent to, you know, the characters and everything like that. So yeah, it's an odd form, but also sorry, I rambled a little bit there, but to answer your question,
that's what this is all about. So that's great.
It's really, it has. I think subconsciously I've kind of taken things on board that I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't been reading these short stories. So in a kind of weird way, it has, I hope, improved my own writing. And like, there's that kind of old adage of like, you know, the more you read, the better you become. And it's the same thing with writing, the same thing with reading. Like, the more you read, you know, the more sort of experience you'll have, the more you write, you know, you'll be able to kind of pick up things that are like, you know, that's a bit clunky, that line's a bit clunky, this whole paragraph's a bit clunky, do I need this? Does this serve a purpose for the plot or the character, la 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 la, and you kind of go through and you kind of chop things up and, you know, you kind of condense things down. With Birthday Treat, for example, like it's a big book, and I was very conscious of the fact that, you know, I was like, are people going to actually, it's going to be boring? Like, you need to kind of, you know, do the pacing element as well. So as well as like kind of technical stuff that you have, there's also pacing elements as well, just like a movie, just like watching a film. You know, if you're watching a you know, a kind of like 1970s style Russian you know, stalker type thing, then you know mentally that this is what you're going to be watching. But if you're watching like an Avengers movie or something like that, you know, there's going to be big explosions and stuff like that. It's all relative to, you know, who's going to be reading it, why they're going to be reading it, etc. Yeah.
And speaking of Birthday Treat, what can you tell us about it? What were your inspirations for it? How did it come to be?
So I think, so the synopsis, if I was giving you like an elevator pitch, I would basically say that it's The Running Man meets 1984 meets The Purge. So essentially it's set in a kind of like dystopian sort of future of the UK. The genesis of it originally was from the I'm not sure if you, but there was like London riots in 2011, and that was a kind of a weird time where I think the consensus of a lot of people was just a lot of anger bubbling beneath the surface of like everyday people. And there was one particular story that I read and saw on the news at the time about this girl who, this kind of mob mentality as such, where you know, all this stuff was kicking off. People were looting and rioting and, you know, breaking down windows and all this kind of stuff. And there was this one story of this girl, and I think she was like a kind of Olympic, what's the word, like not trustee, but like someone who's on the board. Like she was meant to be like a kind of spokesperson. And there was like I think there was an image of her like with a traffic cone, like, you know, just smashing a kind of car or something like that. And it kind of really something in this old noggin sort of thing just kind of like stirred. And it was like this weird thing of like this one person who previously had this kind of like, you know, Olympic sort of like dreams and stuff like that, and it all just came crashing down on this kind of mob mentality. So that kind of resonated, and it kind of gestated for a while. And then there was something, I think I was at work one day, and I just kind of thought to myself, like, I think I was having a conversation with a friend, and it was just like, if for example, just, what if you could get away with any crime for a day, what would you do? And it was that kind of like, that kind of pub talk sort of like conversation. And it was interesting to kind of see what the kind of repercussions would be. And like, if you could get away with anything and there'd be no consequences, what would you do? So Birthday Treat is essentially, the story is that the government has collapsed. There's like, violence and looting and everything's gone on a massive high. And this kind of like, say, like Netflix type of corporation comes in and essentially becomes the new government. And what they do is, in order to kind of quell the violence and everything that's going on, is they create this kind of scheme called Birthday Treats, which basically means that at one day in your life, one birthday that you have in your life past the age of 18, you're given free roam to do whatever you like without any consequences. The thing is, if you forfeit your treat, if you decide not to do that, which is in your rights, you get automatically entered into this game show called Hunted. So basically, you then have to survive 5 days in the UK or whatever sort of thing without, people, everyone around you is trying to find you, capture you, and retire you, which basically is a Blade Runner term for, kill you. So there's 3 main characters in this. George is like an everyday man. He's part of the system. He's part of the network. He used to be a former psychologist. He actually talks to people who have just committed a birthday treat, and he kind of like is, trying to see how they get on and everything. And his kind of world gets violently shook one day. Another character is Alice. She has forfeited her birthday treat and she's on the run. And then the other character is a guy called Katla, who's a network agent, and his task is to actually try and find her and retire her. So yeah, their worlds collide in that kind of essence. Yeah, so it's kind of like a dystopian speculative fiction sort of piece. Yeah.
Yeah, from the cover, I immediately had the dystopian 1984 Big Brother type of vibe from the cover. Just looking at the cover. That's what I was stealing from. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and it's really, it's hard to get a good cover because I'm sure covers are tough, but it's very simple. It's to the point. It's not too clunky. It's so eye catching right away.
Well, that was the thing. Like, so I'm self-publishing this, and I know there's a lot of different routes that an author can go down. You can try and find a literary agent. You can, self-publish yourself now, and even like I'm going down the Amazon KDP route. But a lot of that is there's a lot of legwork that you have to do yourself. And I was looking for that kind of minimalistic sort of approach, almost like 1984 sort of style. You can get like freelancers if you're not fortunate enough to have anyone who knows like graphic design work and stuff like that. Then there's always options as well there. So that's the kind of route I'm going down. Yeah.
Oh, so you had it? You had a freelancer help develop it? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write Birthday Treat? Did it start kind of gestating in 2011? And
so from 2011, definitely it was. And I said, it was that kind of like going from that one sort of germ of an idea, that little seed that gets planted, and then it kind of like evolved from there. So I knew the kind of concept would be about this kind of whole, if you could do this thing, if you could do this whatever despicable act you could, and there'd be no consequences, like what would be the kind of what would happen there. And I was intrigued by that. It kind of just stayed with me. But yeah, it took a couple of years because I started with a short story. So that the first chapter is Katla basically coming in into this household, and he's questioning this old lady, and it becomes apparent that there's a kind of there's more going under the surface than what's kind of realized. And I had that as a short story, and I kind of wanted to just kind of elongate it, and then from there sort of other characters grew and like other plot elements, but I didn't want it to become too cumbersome. That's a problem that I have sometimes, is that I there's loads of ideas, but sometimes making it into a nice package can be awkward to do. So yeah, it did take a few years to get those elements together. But yeah, I think since 2020 sort of thing was such a dumpster fire of a year, but also in that kind of respect, it gave a lot more opportunity and time to actually sort of sit down and write things out. So yeah.
And with dystopian stories, was because I've noticed now that recently in the past maybe even 20 years, movies and books that focus too much on reality, like war movies that are based in modern times, don't do so well. I think people are kind of burnt out on watching the news and current events, that they kind of shy away from that. So was that a concern when you were writing a story like this, that I think wouldn't be too from what we've seen the last several years, it kind of seems like that could happen, so it's,
no, I mean, I definitely agree. It was kind of weird in that kind of respect, because I think people who like the dystopian sort of genre will always love dystopian genre, regardless of what is going on in life. I'm one of those kind of people. I do have a bit of a macabre sense of humor, sort of thing. So I do like, I can always. There's a book that's actually coming out in January by S.A. Barnes called Dead Silence. I'm really looking forward to reading it, because it's that kind of thing. Like, it just has, the tagline is like salvage crew, a spaceship, and it's like aliens, and I'm like, that's great for me. Like, you can probably see some figurines in the background there, some alien figurines, but that's fine. But it's that kind of thing of like, I regardless, I want to read it. So in that respect, even though with the kind of pandemic in 2020, with people, having like tragedies and stuff like that, I do understand that maybe there is more of a, maybe people want some more fluffy things, maybe to read some more, other genres. That's fine. That's completely, but personally, I don't think that's, I think there's always going to be that kind of thirst, if you will, for that kind of thing. So no, I don't think it's going to, well, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I get a kick out of these kind of stories because, it's not too, from what we've seen, like I said, the last few years, it's like, it could happen, it's with and that's, you mentioned aliens and the movie Aliens and the Wayland Corporation, Yukani Corporation. So it's kind of like, well,
well, the thing, I mean, truth is stranger than fiction in that respect. But like, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a political kind of person, but from your America sort of like state of mind with president, and then from our one with it's prime minister, it's balmy. It's balmy. Life is so bizarre sometimes, and that's why I thought, like, I think that kind of galvanized me, to be honest with you, a little bit. Like, when you see these kind of people come into power that absolutely have no idea what they're doing, and I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe maybe a book about this kind of corporation coming to power isn't so kind of stupid, that kind of thing. So in that respect, I do think that, I think there's a suspension of disbelief, obviously, but I think also at the same time as well, life can be just as strange or just as twisty-turny sort of thing. So yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. Back in 2016, when the election happened, my daughter, who was, I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time, when it all started kind of unraveling, my daughter had said something like, is this kind of like when Biff was mayor in Back to the Future 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. No, it's you never know. Like, who knows what's around the corner? I think in a kind of weird retrospective way, like, how old are you, Steve, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 41.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
You look good for it, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But like, I think, I'm 38 sort of thing, and I think we've all been like, if you look past, like, since we've been alive, there's so many events that have happened. We saw in the millennium, I think we saw the last, like, eclipse, stuff like that, and or that we're going to be alive for anyway.
That's depressing.
But like, there's so many things that we've experienced, and now we've just gone through like a Spanish flu type of thing. It's crazy. We live in a crazy world. So in that respect, I don't think you know, a mild sort of like dystopian novel like is pushing the boundaries or pushing the envelope too far, you know. And there's a lot of other different things out there as well that you know, modern life and everything like that, with the age of, I'm sounding like such a boomer at the moment, but like, you know, technology taking over, but like it is that kind of thing, you know. It's bizarre, but it's also true. But yeah, no, I think you know, sometimes a bit of escapism in the form of the literary novel is a great way to decompress and maybe just take some stuff on board and see like the kind of society around you and kind of think to yourself like, well, it's not that bad.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned you feel like a boomer, because there's time, I think it's different for us, that we remember life before the internet, and these you know, if you're 30 or younger, you really don't remember life before it's been a part of your life every single day.
I kind of feel sorry for them a little bit as well, like, you know, with that, because like, you know, there was that whole like, you know, with the cassettes and you know, then with the Discmans and stuff like that, and it's like we've seen this kind of natural progression of like, say, that kind of technology, and it's great, it's fantastic. But now has it become too prevalent now? Is it, you know, like you can just sit down, you don't have to go like this, the whole kind of question at the moment, you know, this is something that kind of brought up during the pandemic. It's like cinemas are just, you know, reopening now, and like everyone's trying to get back in. I'm a massive movie geek sort of thing, so I love going to cinema anyway. And you know, you see these kind of like, just literally click a button and you can see what you want right there in front of you and everything like that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is tough. It's funny because social media is the thought behind it, or at least I guess the intention was to bring people closer, but does it drive us farther apart is the, you know, so
a lot of trolls out there, a lot of trolls.
Interesting, very interesting.
Definitely.
So having Birthday Treat, and what is the release date for Birthday Treat?
So I'm planning to have this released on 8th of October.
Okay.
So just in time for Halloween.
Awesome.
It's not horror, but you know, it's dystopian speculative fiction, I'd say. Yeah.
It could be. I think it could be horror. I think it could
be some. Yeah,
I guess subgenre.
Yeah, definitely.
And is it nerve-wracking to have a release date for your book that you've worked so hard on, you've put so much time into? What does that feel? Are you nervous? Did you get anxious, or what does that feel like?
It's a weird combination, to be honest with you, because like obviously I've sent this to a few core group of people for like editing purposes and stuff like that, and just to get their like honest feedback. But sometimes, you know, sending sort of manuscripts to friends can sometimes be a bit counterproductive, because obviously they want to kind of just be like, yeah, this is really like, will they give you the honest truth, like the 100% honest truth? Don't know. So in that kind of respect, from a kind of British kind of view, I've got that kind of weird. I take compliments. I don't take compliments very well. I hate that, but I take criticism very well. That's kind of, I think, I don't know if that's a British thing or just like me myself, but like yeah, I'm always open for constructive criticism, definitely. But like once it's done, and there's no turning back on it now, sort of thing. It's like releasing a little baby into the world. It's it's there. Yeah, I'm just, you know, can only hope really that it kind of resonates and speaks to people. If not, then fuck it, I'll have to write something else.
I think you kind of have to have that attitude. Like it's out there. I'm proud of it, and whatever happens. You want people to like it, but you know.
Yeah.
And do you plan on it being a series, or is it a standalone?
Interesting that you answer, because one of my friends did say like you could this is a universe that you could probably carry on with. I think at the moment, maybe I've had some ideas. I won't spoil the ending, sort of thing, but there is an opportunity maybe for something. But I think at the moment, so what I've done is during the pandemic, in a weird way. So with Storgy, it's a 3-man team. So there's myself, Ross Jeffrey, who's himself a Bram Stoker finalist, and does exceptional work. Like you read his stuff, it's really good. And Tom Gito, and we during that kind of like, you know, we're doing Skype calls, and weirdly we went back to the old days of Storgy, where, you know, we'd give each other like a title, and then we'd come back and we'd have a Skype call and we'd read it to each other, and we'd give ourselves like some critiques and stuff. And from that, I've actually been able to do an anthology of like short stories. So that's going to be the next thing coming out. I'm kind of working on that at the moment, just like editing it and sort of, you know, cutting things down or putting stuff up. But yeah, like no, I've got an idea for another novel, which I think in next year that's what I'll be concentrating on. But never say never. I might come back to this world. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
It's nice to have the option to go either way. So since you've started Storgy and you've been working on, you've been contributing and you've had this kind of group of writers, how has the industry changed in that time? Has it changed? Because now we have self-publishing and Amazon. It's a whole new world, and I think the barrier for entry is a lot lower now for good and bad. I mean, it's good and it's bad. The good news is anyone can do it, and the bad news is anyone can do it. So
yeah, it's very interesting. I think the proof is in the pudding in that respect. Like when I'm very for myself, I'm very open to kind of reading new authors or authors that I'm not aware of, and they get recommended to me or just by word of mouth start reading. And there is something I think intrinsically important about the fact that I'm one of those, if you read something and it's like just not for me, then you can go away. So like as you were saying, like the self-publishing route. And I put myself up on the kind of guillotine with this as well, because like some people might read it and go, it's not for me. That's fine. That's all right. But as long as I think if someone say decides to self-publish and they're like an avid writer and you'll probably see a kind of weird process of how they grow and how they sort of develop and stuff. And I'm always for that. I'm always for like personal growth. And I include myself with that as well. But also at the same time, you could read a Stephen King novel and be like, yeah, Stephen King is great, like whatever sort of thing. Like, he can do so, characters, and stuff like that. But like, it's a weird one. It's strange. I imagine the old school way of publishing, and I'm talking about like mega companies like Penguin or stuff like that. I think maybe there needs to, I don't know, they'll get the kind of the household name type people, which people are always going to adhere to. If you're an Agatha Christie sort of fan, you like that kind of, you're going to always buy Agatha Christie type things, and then from that probably branch out, split off, and like try other kind of like crime thriller type authors based on that. It depends on the readership sort of thing, I guess. I don't think too much about that kind of stuff, to be honest with you, only because of the fact that if you do, you go probably a bit crazy. Just I read what I like the genres. I read particular genres that I like. I try to branch out when I know. And you were talking about social media and a bit sort of thing. It's like it's great. There's a great community out there that will recommend stuff, and I've read so many novels just through recommendations of like someone that said like, this is really good. And if it's like up my street, I'll be like, that does sound really good. Like, and I'll read it. I'll be like, it's really good. And then I'll kind of follow that author sort of thing and see how the progression goes on from there. So, yeah.
And did you ever consider going, was there ever a question for you that you're going to self-publish? Did you ever consider going with a bigger publisher?
With the kind of going through the kind of literary agent sort of field, personally, this is for me, this is a bit more of an experiment as well, because like the first time I've done it myself, through Storgy, we've published like other novels and stuff like that, and we've done that in-house. But I didn't want there to be like a conflict of interest of like, going through Storgy. But B, I just wanted to kind of do it. So it was that kind of like, your own sort of satisfaction, your own kind of like a personal goal, if you will. So I went that way just for that. I could have like, sent out dozens of emails to like literary publishers and stuff like that, and probably got like a whole bunch of rejections. But it was just it was just the kind of fact that I just kind of wanted to do this, see how it goes, and like when it does get released, I guess I'll see how it goes from there. If there's a positive response to it and everything like that, then I'll continue. If not, then maybe I'll try a different route. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm not very organized, to be honest with you. So it's just like seeing how things go. Yeah. I'm like with the wind. I just go with the wind. See how.
Sometimes you have to be. So from your your experience in getting Birthday Treat, going the self-publishing route and Amazon, going through Amazon. What surprised you most about that experience? What was the most surprising thing?
I suppose the kind of whole self-promotion aspect is not something that I'm good at. And not very I don't like with social media. I don't go on like Twitter every day and like say something profound or anything like that just to get. I'm one of those. I'll do a cat meme. I'll send a cat meme out like once in a while and stuff like that. So, but yeah, when you do have to self-up, you do have to work it, sort of thing. You have to play the game, and I'm don't really like that kind of aspect of it. I'm gonna, as I said, like my friend and fellow Storgy colleague Ross Jeffrey, he's superb. The man is a machine. I don't know how he does it. He basically has written in this past year, I think, like 100 novels. Basically, he's really good at what he does, but he's really good on the social media as well. He promotes fellow authors. He just generates this kind of like positive vibe amongst the community. And I'm not that kind of person, to be honest with you. I can't go on every tweeting. I can't do it, to be honest, but I've kind of having to force myself to do it because that's what you have to do when you self-publish. So there is an element of that which you may find for any kind of fellow authors who want to self-publish. There is that element to it that you might find yourself in a kind of deep waters or uncomfortable zones and stuff like that. But unfortunately or fortunately, you have to do it. Like that's the only way that it's going to get done. And you'll see the result of it at the end of the day. But once again, as I said, like if you just like prefer writing, you're doing it in front of your screen, and then you give it off to some other person or publisher and they do all that work, then so be it. And I hope that's the case, that happens.
Does it come back to the whole, because I'm the same way. I'm bad at taking compliments. So does it come back to that whole kind of mindset?
Not just a British thing?
Yeah, I think no. I think I'm the same way. I'm really bad with compliments, but really I could handle criticism a lot better. So I think that might be part of it. Just because it's a lot of it is look at me, and not in a negative way. I think promoting your work is important, and it's just getting over that initial feeling of I don't want to be a pest to everybody. I don't want to sound like an idiot all the time. So I'm not clever. I don't have really clever things to say on Twitter and really funny things, and so that's just not me. So it's a little weird.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like Steve, I think me and you are exactly the same in that respect. Like, yeah, I as I said, like I will steal a meme from someone else and then I'll post it. I'll be like, this is funny, isn't it? Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I don't have any kind of profound things to say really. And if I do, then it's usually when I've had like, a couple of whiskeys and the alcohol takes effect. But yeah, no, apart from that, it's just something that, but you have to do it. That's the thing, you do have to do it because at the end of the day, you do need to blow your own trumpet. I was on a webinar sort of course the other day where I was giving a talk to sort of writers in that respect. And one of the questions was that, and it was like, yeah, you do have to blow your own trumpet. I know it probably goes against the grain for a lot of people. As you said, I don't think a lot of people, but there are narcissists in the world, and they'll do it effortlessly. That's fine. That's great. That's you're playing to your strengths. But for the other people that don't, what's that famous quote like? The people that are are the ignorant ones, but the kind of smart people. I'm not saying I'm smart at all. I'm as thick as two planks, but yeah, it's that kind of weird thing going on. So yeah,
self-awareness is very important, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think some people don't have that, but everyone's different. So, so and yeah, you mentioned whiskey, so yeah, I think we are very similar. my best ideas after a couple of glasses of whiskey.
That's it. Yeah, that's when the brain goes to different areas of the vortex.
Yeah, it goes off in the ether. And you mentioned you had you had done some talks with some writers. What are the most common questions you get asked about writing and advice? What's the most you get at, like the common questions?
Well, I think because with Storgy, it was the main talk was about in terms of as a literary sort of like agent, if you will. What's the best way to approach someone? Like if you have a short story, like say your genre of fiction is romance, what's the best way to submit a story? Like what do you say in your kind of opening email, that kind of thing. And at the end of the day, I personally, I don't really care what is said in the, hello, Mr. Self, like, this is my short story, blah, 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 blah. I don't need like an essay at that point because all I want to do is read the story. And if it's good enough, then we'll go from there. Then I'll kind of like ask you about, your details and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the questions are basically, what makes a good short story? And that's one of the universal questions, like why do we dream? That kind of thing. It's you could have an answer for it, but you can't sum it up, I don't think. What makes a good story is, for me personally, as I said before, if it grips me from page 1 to page 15 or whatever it may be. If you have characters that I rally behind and sort of empathize with or sympathize with, if you have like antagonists that aren't just like paper 2D cutouts of like they have like depth to them, stuff like that, and even then if you don't have like your story may not be focused on characters. If the plot's really good and it kind of draws me into a particular world, then yeah, definitely it's going to find a home. And even though if it's not with Storgy, I hope it is with someone else. Like that's the thing. Like, I've always been an advocate of, people who write and want to have a story in the world need to find a home for it. Rather, like just don't let it gestate in your drawer, and throw it out there somewhere. And so the kind of advice that I would say to any writer would be like, don't sit on the thing that you're doing. I know sometimes it's hard. But like, get it out there. I know I'm giving myself advice because like I don't do that either. So yeah.
And when you were writing Birthday Treat or just any of your writing, do you ever stop and consider what your reader would want to happen, or do you go with what you want? Do you ever stop and wonder why your reader would expect X, Y, and Z, or not yet? I
think if you start thinking about what other people are going to think, then you've lost. Personally, you write for yourself. That's how I see it. I write the things that I would like to read, essentially. I write sort of speculative fiction because, I am intrigued. I'm still learning myself. So, but no, I personally think if you're sort of sitting there thinking, oh, what would this guy or this girl think about this? Then you kind of enter a different zone of writing, if that makes sense. Like you're not just you're not being true, you're not being honest to the page in front of you, that cursor that's blinking. You're trying to emulate something for someone else, which inevitably is going to fall short, I think. So always write for yourself, I think, first and foremost. Don't worry about what your partner thinks. Don't worry about, just write what you want. The truth will out in that respect. And
when did you start writing? How old were you? How did you start getting involved or start writing for yourself?
Well, it's interesting because when I was really young, I unbeknownst to me at the time, I think I had some learning sort of difficulties with reading because I think a teacher or what do you call it, like a nursery or primary school teacher, whatever, had to have a chat with my parents. And my dad actually read to me at night, sort of thing. And I know, like, most parents will probably read to their kids at night and everything like that. But I think it was like a more of a we need to get Tony. He's not there. That Forrest Gump kind of like chart thing. It was that kind of like you're there kind of thing. You need to. So my dad, like, I've dedicated the Birthday Treat to my dad because he basically he taught me to read. He taught me the power of imagination. I think we had these. He bought this whole collection of like books, and they were like sort of those. I don't know I don't know if you have the same sort of thing, but there'll be like a series of like at the time I was like a toddler sort of thing, so I don't really remember it that well. But like I remember him reading to me. And that, I think, was the kind of catalyst. As I was growing up, where I lived in Acton, we had this alleyway behind us, this long alleyway. And as kids, like, you know, this is once again another boomer sort of thing, but you know, when you played outside with other kids on the street, sort of thing, we'd always go around this alleyway, and it had this kind of like really foreboding sort of, I don't know what it was, but there was like this foreboding atmosphere about this alleyway. Not that there weren't crackheads there or anything like that. It wasn't that kind of way. I know Acton, in London, Acton's, you know, could be considered to be a little, you know, sketchy. I lived there all my life, W3. This alleyway, for example, I remember writing this kind of series, these series of, I must have seen like Chucky at the time, because for some reason I was in this kind of like, the thing was called Killer Baby. It was a baby that rode a motorcycle and had like finger claws like Freddy Krueger. Yeah. Don't think it would ever see the light of day. But I had these series of like short, like just literally A4 pieces of paper written, you know, stapled together, like a kind of weird mini series graphic novel type of thing, and it just went on from there, really. So then short stories, I've always been you know, just I love short stories, and just kind of went on from there. Sometimes there'll just be like an idea that pops in your head, like, you know, you're on the toilet or something like that, or you're, you know, eating a burrito, and then like something just pops up and you're like, oh, well, that's interesting. What can I do here? And then from there, explore. Yeah.
Or sipping some whiskey and ideas come flowing.
Or sipping some whiskey and then like just the ideas come flooding in. Yeah. Maybe not as together though, but yeah.
And what is your writing process? When you start getting the ideas, do you start with plot or characters, or how do you kind of, do you have a starting point, or does it just evolve on its own?
For me personally, I kind of tend to have like an idea or something. So I'd say like with Birthday Treat, the germ of the idea came from, you know, the London riots, but it wasn't cohesive at the time. And then having a conversation with a friend in a pub, like sort of like there's like a sieve, and the ideas are being filtered through the sieve, and like the ones that actually stay are in there. But yeah, usually to me, I'll have like an image in my head, like there'll be like, you know, two guys sitting on a table, or, you know, some bizarre thing. And then from that, I kind of like spiral outwards. So then the characters probably come from certain situations, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's my kind of process. I know a lot of other people are different. Like, you know, you'll have like a specific character, and it will be like, you know, I want this protagonist to have these certain kind of sets of skills, or I'll have this antagonist who does this. No, for me, I'm more kind of based on the actual, like a setting or a scene or something, or just something that's very obtuse and very kind of out there, and then sort of bring everything around it, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does make sense. Do you have a favorite types of scenes to write that you enjoy more than others? Certain scenes, or certain types of, because you know, like action, it seems like it's really hard to write action scenes. Do you have a certain type of scene that you enjoy more than others? Or even dialogue, or whatever it may be.
I was going to go with dialogue. I do like dialogue between characters, in that kind of like Quentin Tarantino sort of style of, like, you know, just being able to like be very realistic, but also at the same time having this kind of like wow factor to it. Like you just mentioned there about action scenes, like I struggle with action scenes. Like I have to pick up like a Lee Child's copy of like Jack Reacher thing, just to be like, okay, this is how you do it, kind of thing, you know. Yeah, that's a good question, man. I don't know. Like, I think sometimes organically, for me, for example, I don't know about other people, but like I don't have like a I'll usually have like, if there's a chapter for it, I know what needs to happen in this chapter. But some, you know, obviously I don't know how it's gonna formulate or mutate in that respect, because sometimes you could be writing about something and then just weirdly maybe it's going to tangentially go off on this other route, and like, you know, as a train like has its different tracks, like maybe this will go over here, sort of thing. I'm very kind of like things are up in the air, and it's just like trying to catch certain bits and pieces and then put them together, and that's where the editing comes in as well. So yeah, I heavily edit as well, because sometimes I just have this like list, this reams of, you know, dialogue speaking. It's like, well, does this actually serve a purpose, what this person is saying, like, or is this just like guff? So yeah, it's I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, I would say the interactions of people, not just dialogue, but yeah, that's what I like. I like writing about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
What about your favorite genres to write? Do you have a favorite genre that you enjoy writing more than others?
I do like horror, but I'm more like speculative fiction. So I like reading a story where grounded in kind of reality, or grounded in a certain sort of sense of realism, but then turns surreal. You know what I mean? Like I like that. I like when something catches you off guard, but does it in a way that, oh wow, didn't see that coming. Not in a kind of M. Night Shyamalan sort of way, but in a kind of weird, like, I thought this was going somewhere and then it kind of changed. You know, like the first time I watched Predator, for example, you know, was, you know, it's an action movie, very kind of like, you know, testosterone filled, but then halfway through it becomes a sci-fi film. It's like, well, what am I watching here? Like the first time you watch it, I mean, now it's like, you know, from the 80s and stuff like that, so everyone's seen it and all the various sequels and whatnot. But when you kind of get to that point of like the first time you watch something or read something and it just defies your expectations because it just blindsides you, I like that. Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Oh, I don't write, but I enjoy. I don't really have a favorite genre that I read, but I don't read much romance. But other than that, I'm open to whatever. I have been on a bit of a fantasy, because I've been reading a lot of fantasy lately, and I'm just a little burnt out on fantasy. So,
do you find that like when you're reading like a particular genre for a while, and it's like, oh, this is really good, but then you read a few, and then like it's just like, oh, I need to just detach myself away from a little bit.
The only one I've felt that way about is fantasy. The rest I can read horror for a long time, or even darker fantasy, because it's different. Those different things.
Yeah.
Fantasy, I think, there's some good fantasy, but it's just the same formula. You know, it's a lot of it is, and not all of it, but a lot of
the
it
hero
is just
journey sort of thing. Yeah.
The chosen one, and it's like, okay, that's enough.
Well, that's why I like stuff like Terry Pratchett. Like that's why I love, you know, that kind of genre, which is like kind of comedy, fantasy, sci-fi. You know, that kind of thing. Like you can always go back to it. Like much like Stephen King in that respect, like with horror, like I can always like dip my toe back into that type of familiar world. But yeah, no, it's I think speculative fiction, I think, is my way. What I like, yeah.
Do you believe in writer's block? And it's funny how many different answers I've heard to this question. So I'm curious to what your thoughts are.
I believe that this might sound harsh, but I believe that for a writer, I don't believe in writer's block as a kind of like the term itself kind of annoys me, I'll be honest. But also I understand. What I would say is, of course, there are days where, you know, you wake up and you may have the feeling of, I need to write something. I'm one of those kind of people, once again, I hold my hand up, like, you know, there'll be days where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write 6,000 words today. Ha ha. And then, you know, I get distracted like a moth to fly, you know, to the flame, and I'll watch Netflix and I'll do this and I'll do that. And I'm putting everything off. I'm putting everything off because I know I need to do this, but I won't do it. I think that's the kind of writer's block in that respect. Like I might have an idea, but how am I going to write it? You know, I have a character. How am I going to, you know, describe what he does? And it's that kind of imposter syndrome sort of like thing coming about. It's like you kind of sit there and go like, well, I could do that, or I could watch the thing on the thing and slug out on the sofa and stuff. sometimes just sitting in front of a screen, even if it's a blank page, and you just have that cursor blinking, that's the best remedy for it, in all honesty. Because even if you're sitting there for half an hour and nothing comes to you, and you're getting frustrated and you're getting like angry, and some days I've had that as well. There's been days where I was just sitting there and I've just written something. I'm like, this is shit. This is complete bollocks. I don't like it at all. You're going to have those days, but you know what? So what? It makes you a better writer, I think, in that respect. So, yeah, I think the writer's block type of thing, I think it's more of a state of mind. I know that sounds so wankily to say, but it is like that kind of thing. It is. It's really not a. It's one of those things of like, look, sit down in front of your screen or your tablet or wherever you kind of, or piece of paper and pen, and just see what comes. Because most of the time, I'd say, yeah, about 60% of the time, even if you just sit down, forget everything else, forget the TV, forget all the social media, forget the phone, forget whatever, just sit down and just see what comes, because most of the time it will happen. And even if it's bullshit, you've still written something. That's the thing. Like, I'd rather prefer to have that day where I'm sitting there going like, you know, I wrote just about 2,000 words and it's nonsense, it's complete nonsense, but at least I wrote it, and therefore maybe I can take something from it, I can take segments from it, I can put it into something else, who knows. Yeah.
So you'll improve, right? Even if you write just a little bit that's not very good, you'll still improve and learn for next time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like we're saying, what's that saying of like, you know, if you do a task 10,000 times, you become like master of it. And that's the same thing with writing, the same thing with reading. Like, you know, I like to think people read because they enjoy reading. I know I do, but I go through bursts. What I found, you know, is that I literally will have a night, like you know, I'm in the mood for something. It's like for me, it's like films. Like there'll be a particular genre of film, like I want to see a heist film, or I want to see a kind of, you know, turn my brain off and Fast and Furious type film, or I want to watch a complex, you know, highbrow film. That's the same for me with books. Whenever I read anything, it's like I go through like these phases of like, I want to read this, I want to read this, I want to read this, and I'll kind of read for like you know, a week, and then I'll switch off. And then I'll like literally I won't read anything for, could possibly be a couple of weeks, could be, you know, a month or so. But then I'll come back into it and I'll be like, now I need to do this. And then I'll read again and like, you know, try and get as much burst of information as possible. So, yeah.
And of course, we've talked a little bit about the last couple of years and the pandemic. In what ways has the pandemic changed your view of stories or your writing style, or even would Birthday Treat even be a book being released soon if it wasn't for the pandemic?
I think so. I'm going to have to kind of compartmentalize a few of that, because like from a story point of view, I've obviously been reading a lot of short stories that deal with the pandemic. And it's interesting to sort of see other people's interpretations of how, you know, the pandemic has affected them or their storytelling or their characters and stuff like that. For me personally, I don't think it sounds flippant to say that I don't think it's kind of affected me, if that makes sense. But I think in terms of what the past, like say, year and 3 quarters has been, as there's been like maybe a disconnect with like people talking, like people being able to see their friends and families and stuff like that. So I think that has probably, there may be some like noxious sort of gases underneath the surface of like everyone, and that might explode. Like I was talking about earlier about to you about the London riots in 2011, and it will be interesting to kind of see, you know, with stuff that's going on politically, socially, how that's going to kind of come to the forefront. I don't know. But in terms of writing, I can't ignore the fact that by being at home for like the last nearly 2 years now, that has helped. But yeah, no, it's a strange one. I think it's too magnanimous a thing to kind of think about in that respect. I don't know. I think I might go crazy if I think about it too much. But
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
and we may not even really really get we may not even have a grasp of how much has impacted us for years down the line until who knows how long it'll go on. And
well, that's the thing. Like in terms of like so you work within the government, is that correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like so I imagine that you've been how has it affected you in that respect of like, because I imagine you've been at the forefront, like you've been on the front line in that respect.
I actually haven't. It's funny because my schedule hasn't changed at all. In fact, we've been working more.
Yeah.
So I've been one of the lucky ones, and I know not everyone's that fortunate. So at the beginning, it was strange that everyone, because everything shut down, and we just keep this business as usual for us. So it's been.
And how have you found? Because for me, for example, there's the whole like returning back to work life and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people that have like anxiety about that. But I mean, how do you feel in that respect? Because if it's been like business as usual for you, sort of thing, like how have you been dealing with that?
Well, I think, I do have some friends that we just started seeing again, because we used to see our friend, once a month. We'd have we called it like we'd get together and go to dinner and see a movie or something. So
yeah,
in that respect, it's been different. But I've been looking forward to seeing people and to getting out and going to see a movie again. And,
yeah.
That's for me. It's been fun, or it was fun for a little while. Things are shutting back down now, but no, I've been looking forward to seeing people again and being, going out to dinner. Or those little things that we all took for granted before that we never really thought, if you would have gone back and talked to yourself, your 2019 self, and told yourself, this is what life will be in 2021, you'd have thought you were nuts,
Yeah. And I'd also go back and say, invest in Pfizer.
Yes.
Go on the stock market.
Make some investments. Yeah, I wish I would have done that. Yeah. Who would have known?
Yeah. No, it's funny because like you think of like the kind of the creative. So I don't know, like in the UK, for example, there were a lot of like adverts during the pandemic of like basically telling people to try to get involved in a job that was like a digital job. It was a very, very funny sort of like thing of basically saying active like working jobs at the moment, like frontline like working is not going to be the way to go. Digital though, because you can work from home, and that's what they were trying to sort of push on the public. It kind of got met with the typical kind of British zeal, if you will. But like, yeah, it's strange. I don't know if like books and literature in the next couple of years will have that kind of essence of what we've been going through in the last couple of years. You have look at the George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, like where it's like consumerism, zombies, blah 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 blah. Will you have that with certain novels that kind of come out in the future? Like, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I've noticed that a lot of the newer TV shows, and some of them are embracing the mask wearing, and their characters wear masks, and they're in the show, they're in a pandemic. And I don't notice that most of the newer TV shows get away from that. They want things to look normal, before, because people want an escape from
what's
happening
they
outside.
don't really showing the kind of reality of like what we've been living for the past. No, I get that. I can understand that as well. Because at the end of the day, you're basically watching a movie for escapism as much as you're reading a novel or playing a video game or something like that. It's escapism. It's pure escapism. So you don't want to be reminded of the shit show that we just had to all go through. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm just trying to think of any kind of like shows that I've seen that have like people wearing masks and stuff. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, I think in the once things calm down, maybe in a year or two, when things are getting back to normal, and when we have some time to reflect and to kind of have some distance, I think you'll see a lot of the stories from this point in time that you'll see a change, at least maybe some of them. but it'll influence
Well,
somebody.
I hope the only thing I can hope for is that it kind of like, expands people's kind of perceptions of, even like sci-fi and stuff like that. Because the best sci-fi that I like to read is sort of grounded in reality. There's like listen, I love as much as like the Star Trek-y, Star Wars-y sort of like style of things in terms of like, spaceships and all that kind of stuff, but I also like the kind of Philip K. Dick sort of type of, grounded grittiness of it as well. So the only thing I can hope of is that this kind of provides a kind of catalyst, I guess, if you will, for people to use their imaginations a bit more and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
For you, when you're writing, whether you're writing or you're reading or you're watching, what makes a character compelling to you?
A compelling character would have to be someone that you can rally behind, I think. Like, if you have a kind of protagonist, like with Birthday Treat, for example, I think with all three of the main characters, if you will, there's George, there's Alice, and there's Kavanaugh. I think there's a little bit of me in every one of them. And I think with any author or any writer, when you're writing about a particular person, George, for example, is, he's a bit of a hypochondriac, but he's also, going through the mill. He's in a kind of loveless kind of marriage and all this kind of stuff. And he's just basically coasting. I think maybe that will resonate with some people because, a lot of people have been coasting for the last XYZ amount of months, years, whatever. Alice is like, she used to be in a kind of punk band, and she has this kind of like sort of fuck the system type of attitude, but also at the same time, there has to be a mixture of vulnerability. There has to be a mixture of there's so many kind of stories that you read where a character is just very two-dimensional and there's no depth and there's no kind of, you want to find out more. I think the best kind of way of answering that would be to kind of like find out, what makes this person tick. Why are they doing the things that they're doing? Some of the, villains as well. Like, villains are probably the best antagonists of any kind of novel, because like, why is this person doing this? Like, I can understand like if it's like a revenge thing, or if they've been like betrayed or something like that, and they've gone down this dark path. And I think like, we were talking about the sci-fi thing earlier, but in terms of like, with Star Wars and stuff like that, it's so simplistic in the kind of like, the light side and the dark side and stuff like that. But how did this person go there and stuff like that? And those kind of things interest me. Yeah, definitely. Being able to do it is hard, man. Like, but I think you just need to dig in and sort of like find out. That's what I love doing as well. I love finding out a character's moral compass, and like, you can have like, of course you can have like the guy who just goes around doing whatever he wants and all that kind of stuff and being cool about it and whatnot, but you also have the other person who's a bit of a coward maybe, but then kind of like has that moment of like, self-fulfillment or redemption or whatever sort of thing. Yeah, it's a good process to be able to invest into that. Yeah,
that's good. In your writing, do you leave secrets or Easter eggs in your books for people to find, or references to other things that you kind of sneak in there for readers to find?
Well, okay. So I need to. This good example of this actually is I've just written a short story, but I need to kind of reference it before. I need like a kind of little prelude to this. So one of the anthologies that we've produced is called Shallow Creek. It's like a horror anthology. So it was a competition essentially. What Storgy did. What we did was we basically held a competition. And what would happen is, say, for example, Steve, you submitted yourself into you wanted to become, what we would do is we'd give you a character, an item, and a location in the town of Shallow Creek. And then that would be like, you'd have to, like, your story would have to, so we've got like a map of the place as well, like with locations and stuff like that. And you would essentially write about this character. We'd give you like a bio of the character, like, certain characteristics and whatnot. So there was all that kind of covered. One of the stories is called Dave Danvers' final. What's it called? Dave Danvers' last foray into all things woo-woo. which is a great title. The character is Dave Danvers. He's like a paranormal investigator, and he goes to the town of Shallow Creek because he's told about this thing. So in that respect, I've just written a short story. It's his brother, and I haven't actually contacted the author. I need to probably do that just to kind of like make sure it's okay. I just love the character so much in that particular story. So what I've done is I've done a short story. It's his brother, and he references Dave Danvers in Shallow Creek, sort of thing. So stuff like that. In Birthday Treat, there's a couple of things, maybe some names, maybe some like shop names and stuff like that that are referenced after people. Not too Easter eggy, like in terms of referencing another book or anything like that, but. Maybe some little really. I mean, unless you know me, kind of like you know me intimately, sort of thing. Like you probably wouldn't, you wouldn't get it, sort of thing. But there maybe are a little few things. But that's maybe something I need to do in the future, perhaps. Yeah, definitely. I love Easter eggs. I love Easter eggs.
I'll just keep my eyes out for that when we read it. Do you have a favorite author?
I flip flop. I do flip flop. I like checking out new authors as well. So, for example, Nick Cutter, he did the Troop, and one that I just recently read, which name I forget at the top of my head. Let me just have a quick look here.
The Deep.
The Deep. Yeah.
It's right there on my shelf.
Oh, you got it? Have you read it?
Yet, but yeah. No,
it's really good. It's really good. But then, I can... There's certain like authors like Diane Cook, for example, who did Man v Nature. But then Stephen King is also like, it's one of those kind of comfortability type things. I would say in like the same things like the movies, like when someone asks you like, what's your top 5 films? And you're like, well, this, and this. There's always going to be favorites, definitely. But I also like to, I also like to try to check out new things. So at the moment, this precise moment in time, I would say Nick Cutter, because I do like the Deep and the Troop, and it's very good, very good. But then I can also go back to Charles Bukowski, Jack Palahniuk, M.R. Carey, Adam Neville, even Nazi Croshaw. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, sort of thing. He's almost like, he's got a very Terry Pratchett sort of like style of writing. It's very kind of like Mogwald, The Jam, stuff like that. He's very funny. I do like some sort of surrealist sort of like comedy sort of thing. So I at the moment I'll take Nick Cutter. Nick Cutter, I'll go with that. Yeah,
it'll change in a few minutes, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite underappreciated books or authors that you feel like are underappreciated?
So as I said, like with Yahtzee Croshaw sort of thing. So he was essentially, he did back in the day, like he did The Escapist. So he'd do like these very kind of like quick machine gun style critiques of video games. But he's also written some novels, and they're very kind of meta, very funny. One was called Mogworld, which was basically a kind of like rip on World of Warcraft, but it was also about a video game. So the characters in the video game didn't know that they were in a video game, and then you'd have like sort of sub chapters where you have like the devs like chatting away and stuff like that about this kind of stuff. Really, really interesting, really funny as well. Like he's quite a poet sort of thing with some of his kind of like roasting sort of comments or just like larger dialogue. Any unappreciated? I mean, I have to give a shout out to my boy Ross Jeffrey. If you haven't read his stuff, then do go for it. He goes into the kind of horror element, and he was last year nominated finalist as a Bram Stoker finalist. His stuff is really good. Just check it out. Drew McCary, he does The Hike, which I read recently, which was really good. It's kind of like a weird Alice in Wonderland sort of type tale, where a guy goes on a hike, but then he kind of enters this weird parallel sort of world. Kind of weirdly, would you describe it as fantasy? I don't know. Really good though. Check it out. Yeah. I think those are the ones at the moment that I've been reading. Yeah.
I hear a ton about Ross Jeffrey, and it's there's so many books I want to read that it's hard to keep up. But yeah, it's definitely on my list.
Well, I mean, there's a trilogy of his books that are kind of novellas. If you want to dip your toe into it, so there's one called Juniper, which is set in this kind of town, which is kind of like a kind of dust ball-y sort of town where most of the residents have kind of gone for whatever reason. And then the sequel to that is called Tome, and he's writing the third one now called Scorched. But they're all kind of intersecting like characters so Tome is set is kind of weirdly like a prequel, so it's set before the events of the first book. But yeah, he's crushing it. He's crushing it. It's good.
Yeah, but to be Bram Stoker nominated, that's really great. What would be something that your readers would be surprised to learn about you? You laughed.
I don't know. Oh God. Surprised no. Obviously, you know, a lot of podcasts have appeared over the last year and a half and stuff like that. But myself and two friends, Brendan and Mike, got together and we started doing a kind of podcasty sort of just you know, guys chatting basically about movies that we like and stuff like that. And we set something up there. It's called Inside Your Screen. I used to be able to put my legs over my head and do a crab sort of walk, but haven't attempted that for a long time. So apart from that, I don't know really, to be honest.
Be careful with that one. You can pull a hammy or something.
Oh yeah. I haven't attempted it for a long time now. So I don't think that'll only be coming out at party times when you know, the drinks are flowing.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned you have a podcast talking about movies. Do you have any favorite directors or writers?
Oh yeah. So Ridley Scott was always like back when I was really young, and I probably watched Alien before I was meant to. But his visionary skills are just like unparalleled. There you go. There's another. I was an extra in his Robin Hood film, his Robin Hood interpretation.
Oh, really?
It wasn't particularly well received, sort of thing, at the box office. But it was fun. I just basically saw a newspaper article that basically said like Ridley Scott film extra, and I was like, sign me up, I'm there. Just to kind of see how he works, because that's always intrigued me. Ridley Scott. Denis Villeneuve. I'm looking forward to the new Dune film coming out. No surprising thing. Haven't read Dune. Have never read Dune. So that's I probably need to read that before the film comes out, just so I get more of a you know, whole capture of the whole scene, sort of thing. What do you like? Do you read like books? Like if you see a movie adaptation that's coming out of a book and you haven't read the book, do you try and read the book first before you see the film, or you just like, I'm going to watch it and see how I go?
It depends. For Dune, I don't really have any interest in reading the book, so I'll probably just watch the movie. But if there's something else, I try to read the book first. I try to, but not always possible. Sometimes I can't wait. Like with it, I really wanted to read the book before I saw was it 2017?
Yeah.
And I was so excited to watch that movie that I was halfway through the book, and I thought I'm just going to watch the movie and just I'll get back to the book when I'm done with the movie.
Yeah.
And I did not like the movie at all. So I did not want to go back.
Do you watch the kind of TV, made for TV sort of first iteration of it? Did you see that one?
Yeah, and it scared the crap out of me when I was younger. And I love the story because of that miniseries. And I'm sure if I watched it now, it'd be really cheesy. And, you know, it's just, I don't know if it holds up or not. But
well, it's interesting because that is interesting because like I was the same. Like, I obviously watched the TV made for TV miniseries first, and then when I knew that the kind of the new version was coming out, I read the book because it's a dense book. It's really thick. Yeah. And there's so much. This is why I prefer reading the books to seeing the kind of movie adaptation, because you know, you can there's so much stuff that gets lost between panels in that respect. And with it, for example, there's so much stuff that, even though in the new version they do, I think they have more of a faithful adaptation to the book in the new version than they do it in the previous one. But I prefer the previous one. And I don't know if that's because of that nostalgic, like that's what I was watching growing up. But I'm the same with you. I didn't really love the new version. It's interesting.
Yeah, the horror elements and the CGI just didn't. It seemed too by the numbers for me. It seemed like every other horror movie you watch.
It was a very safe kind of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it just didn't do it for me. So I did not care for the movie. So then I kind of, the wind got out of my sails and I didn't finish the book.
Yeah, I think part 1 was actually better than part 2. Yeah,
that's what I hear. That part 2 is not very good. So if I didn't like, the funny thing is when most people say I did not like that movie and I go watch it, I usually enjoy it more than most people.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll enjoy it. But yeah. And you mentioned Denis Villeneuve. Have you seen Enemy?
Enemy? No.
It's with I forget his name. He was in Prisoners. He's a famous actor. Prisoners, and he was in gosh, I don't know why I can't think of his name. He was in
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Gyllenhaal, yeah.
He
was in that. He was the
Enemy.
Yeah,
what's it about?
One of his first films. It was about I don't want to give too much away. It's one of those mind-bending films.
I'm just trying to think of it rings a bell, but I don't think I've seen it. Yeah.
It's just really him and one other actress that I can't remember her name, but it's interesting. So if you're looking for a film to watch, and you like him,
No, I mean, I love everything that he's done like so far, like Blade Runner, even like with Blade Runner 2049. What was the one? Arrival, with Amy Adams. He's one. Yeah, definitely has. Once again, like Ridley Scott, like has a very kind of visual sensibility, which I appreciate, sort of thing with directors. But there's also like, I mean, I like Cronenberg, John Carpenter, like my girlfriend. I was actually my girlfriend at the moment, sort of thing, is she hasn't really watched any John Carpenter films, so I've been giving her like this kind of like very kind of like, we're going to watch this tonight, Big Trouble in Little China, and but I think I should have started off. I think I should have started off slow. I should have started off like Assault on Precinct 13, and then got to like They Live, and then sort of like, because Big Trouble in Little China is very fantastical, and I love it. But also at the same time, I think it might have been a bit of a too much of a. She was like sitting there going, "What is going on here? Why? Who? Girl with green eyes? Like what is it? What are these? What's this thing? Like, I was like sitting there going, it's great, it's fantastic, and then you have like the 3 Raiden characters. Yeah, it's too much, I think. But so I'm I'm kind of like going through the catalog of John Carpenter at the moment, which I love. I think he's a great director as well, and music composer. Like, I love his music. I think he was touring before the pandemic, sort of thing. And one of my regrets is that I didn't go to see that, because I think that would have been fucking amazing. But like, guy's got to be like 102 now. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I think his son wrote or directed Possessor. I don't know if you saw that. It was like a science fiction horror
that was
movie.
David Cronenberg's son. Yeah. That I did watch that. I thought that was really good. I thought that was amazing. And it's like, you got these kind of like body horror sort of style films and books and stuff like that. But I think it very well balanced the line of, going from that body horror shock stuff to grounded, even though it's like a kind of sci-fi type of film in terms of like jacking into someone else's mind and using them as a kind of puppet and all that kind of stuff. Very good. That was one of my, I think, was that 2019, 2020? I can't remember when it came out.
I think it was right around then. Yeah.
But that was one of my films of the year type of thing. That was really good. And she, what's her name? I can't remember her name. Oh, that's going to bug me. She was really good anyway. She's a phenomenal actress. She's a phenomenal actress. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot. Speaking about Possessor, but that's the kind of world that I think there's so many more stories to tell in that world. It's such a great world it's just full of stories to want to be told.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, you know, have this kind of like being able to jack into someone's like consciousness and control them for a limited amount of time. And but then the kind of what I loved about that as well is because like it shows there's a very poignant scene sort of thing where she's coming back to her family who she may be estranged from, you don't really know, and she's like just sitting there like before she goes in like hello, 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 because she's losing herself. Those kind of scenes, like those are the things that really kind of speak to you, sort of thing. That, yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that film. Yeah, it's a really good film. Yeah.
How to speak Ridley Scott, you mentioned Ridley Scott. What did you think of Alien Covenant and Prometheus? So I'm assuming you're a fan of the Alien franchise. So
I am.
Curious to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so I was having this conversation with my flatmate the other day. There's a lot of people that don't like the kind of weird prequels. It's a strange one because I actually like the direction of where he was trying to take it in terms of like, look, I mean, he said himself that, you know, the beast is dead. You know, once you've kind of you have this kind of like, you know, look back to 1979 when Alien first came out, and you have this kind of like this monolithic sort of creature designed by H.R. Geiger sort of thing that was just so like terrifying. Like the only one sort of like monster movie feature kind of character that is like literally terrifying. Then you had Aliens, like James Cameron did like a really like, you know, everyone has their kind of favorites and stuff like that, but what he then did was like make it and kind of like have this like military sort of style, like, you know, Vietnam type thing going on. But there was like plentiful amounts of them. And then in Alien 3, that's when it sort of started dipping a little bit sort of thing. But even with, I still think Alien 3 is a great film, and has like, it's kind of like, it's very dark, which I appreciate. But then the prequels, it was like, look, we can't really have the xenomorph anymore. Like, it's been done to death. It's been like, by that time you had the Aliens versus Predator films, which they're great. I mean, so he turned around. He was like, what about the end? Remember that space jockey from the first film? Like, how about we try and find out what was going on then? And then you have the kind of AI thing with David, played by Michael Fassbender sort of thing, like, who was the, you know, standout from that. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed Prometheus, I think, more so than Covenant, because Prometheus, they kind of went with a kind of like, we're gonna sort of probe into kind of like religion and like, you know, how these engineers came down, and are they our makers? Like, we don't know. I really enjoyed that kind of aspect of it. And there's some really good scenes in there. You know, what he tried to basically do was like recreate the kind of chest burster scene from the original Alien with the squid thing in what's the name, Shaw's you know, thing, blah blah. And I think it worked. They had that little moment there, the little stinger at the end where you had like the deacon, where like at the very end, the engineer, it comes out the engineer, it's like, oh, there's the. With Covenant, I think what basically happened there was that there was too much feedback saying like, we need aliens in this Alien film, and it was like, okay, we need to kind of put aliens in this, and it just became very standard and safe, and it was like, oh man, that's not what I was looking for, man. You know, I would have, and Elizabeth Shaw, like, her character's like killed off screen. Like, you don't even. It was very, yeah. I just think there was a lot of production issues going on with that one. But what I was really hoping to see was the Neil Blanc his version of like Alien 3. So basically, he was retconning, you know, and he'd bring back Michael Biehn and Sigourney Weaver for like Hicks and Ripley, and yeah, because obviously Ridley Scott was having his stuff. It's just one of those kind of weird, you know, like Hollywood style things of like what could have been, what could have been there. But I am looking forward. Hopefully, I don't know what's going to be happening, but I haven't heard anything. But I'm looking forward to the third one that kind of now pieces that to the derelict ships landing on LV 426 sort of thing, where, you know, the original crew of the Nostromo come down on the planet and, you know, see that. So I hope it'd be. I just think it'd be weird if they didn't come up with a third film for that. But they need to do some. I don't know what they're planning to do with it. I don't know how you can sort of surprise the audience, if you know what I mean. I think everyone now at the moment is just waiting for that. You just need it done. Like when George Lucas went back for his prequels, and it was like, this is how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. It's like, do we really need to know that? You know, we don't really. He was the boogeyman. He was the best villain, like one of the best villains. He's one of those kind of, BuzzFeed type things of like 50 best villains of all time. He'd usually be in the top 5. Do we need to know this sulky, emo sort of teenager becoming this thing? We don't really. And I kind of had that kind of concept with the Alien films. It was like, I think it's done. Because there's so much there's other stories, and they're doing the Alien series. Alien TV series is coming out now, sort of thing. So maybe I'm just like sounding like an old boomer jaded kind of guy, but I think maybe we need to go on to new things, new storylines, new characters. Yeah, it's a rich environment, a rich world, and that's the thing. That's what I love about it. But they seem to always kind of come back to certain, like, I don't know, certain characters. Like, it's done. Like, just move on, do something else, do something new.
Yeah. I think, like you mentioned, after the response to Prometheus, I think people said, well, we want aliens in an alien movie. And he kind of like took it the other way and said, okay, here you go. And here's the run by the numbers type of story. And you can send it through the airlock again. And it's all.
It was, that's the thing that disappointed me was it was just literally like a kind of retreading of Alien and Aliens. Like at the end of, spoiler warning, but the film's been out for, I don't know how many years, but they blast the alien out into space again. It's like, how many times can you do that? Like, come on. Yeah. It was the Covenant was a little bit disappointing. Prometheus, actually, I still, even though it had its flaws, with the character flaws in terms of like, the two guys, Fifield and the other guy, when they're like, we're leaving, we're getting out of here. And then they get lost. And it's like, oh, what's this cute little thing? Like, you would go up to a creature that looks like some weird fucking. Anyway, yeah. It's I prefer that.
And you've seen the assembly cut of Alien 3, right? The
his name? Bizarre. So the character of he's an English, well, mainly all English actors, but like he's one of the brothers.
Charles Dance, is that?
No. The guy who's he says is like a demon, because there's this whole section that where they basically trap the alien. With Nell and I. I forget his name. Anyway, but there's this whole sequence that they cut out from the original theatrical cut, which I just thought was ludicrous because it's so good. They basically trap the alien in this kind of like nuclear waste room, and then he lets it out, sort of thing. And that, and also the kind of like the alien comes from a like a cow or something rather than the dog. There's just so much stuff there that was like so good that they, just didn't do. But the theatrical release, I thought, was, when I first watched it, I wasn't disappointed with it. I thought actually what they're trying to, I could see what they were trying to do. Like, you had aliens, which was like very kind of like, they're just numerous in their vast amount sort of thing. And they're like, basically just becoming the actual, I think one of the sort of negative things of aliens is that you're making the actual xenomorph like this kind of not expendable character, but like this very easily sort of, so when you have like one, like if you've played Alien Isolation, then you know that one alien is going to be pants-sweatingly terrifying. And that's what I thought they were trying to do with Alien 3, and it was a much more darker sort of tone and like a lot more religious iconography going on and everything like that. But apparently, it didn't. Not a lot of people resonated towards it because whatever. But no, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Not
so much Alien Resurrection though. The less about the better.
I try to forget that ever happened.
Yeah, I know.
So disappointing. But yeah, I think the prequels, I think the timeline is a little wonky with matching up to the first Alien movie. So I would be curious to see if they ever make that third movie. But now that Disney owns the franchise, I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Well, this is it now. I know they're coming out with a new Predator film, Skulls, which is meant to be like the first Predator coming to Earth. And it's going to be with this indigenous tribe. That's going to be interesting. Because once again, that's another kind of movie monster character that I think has died a death in respect of you know, once again, as I mentioned before, like when I watched the first Predator film, like it was very interesting because when I first watched it, it was like, all right, these Marines going into the jungle, and then it becomes like a sci-fi film halfway through. It's like an action film to the first, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then it suddenly becomes this like sci-fi monster movie, which blew my mind, sort of thing. But now it's become so branded, and like the so much magazines and comics and spin-offs and blah blah blah, like it's lost the fangs, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I don't really know with this new one coming out how it's gonna really give you much. Is it just gonna be like, I mean, I Robert Rodriguez's Predators, I actually quite enjoyed. I like the concept of like, these like, what was it, like 7 or 8 different people, and they're like meant to be the best in their fields on this alien island. I thought that was a great concept. And then Shane Black's The Predator was just such a misfire. Like, he's a great director and a great writer. I love, like, once again, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is one of my favorite films. I think he knows dialogue. He knows how to do dialogue. But then that one, it just came out. It was just like, it was so like bizarre. It was just like, it wasn't a Predator film. It was like, I don't understand what's going on here. Is it a comedy? Is it like, I don't know. It was weird. Yeah,
it's too bad. So many missed opportunities and studio interference. And do you have a favorite book to movie adaptation?
So, okay, I do, but it's not. Okay, so Blade Runner is one. Okay, yeah, that's I had to think a lot. Blade Runner is one of my favorite films. That's one of the top 5 that's up there, sort of thing. So Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? But it's a very different novel than what the actual film is. So in a kind of weird way, it doesn't really represent the book, if that makes sense. Because there's so much more, once again, as we were talking about earlier, in terms of like, when you read a book, when you see like a movie, there's so much nuance. There's so much more stuff that goes in the book that you can like pick up on. And I think I'd watched Blade Runner, like, I can't remember the first time I watched it, sort of thing. And then I read the book based on the fact that, wow, this movie is great. I want to read the book now. And it was so different. It was like complete 180 me sort of thing in that respect. Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men, very faithful in that respect. M.R. Carey, Girl with All the Gifts. Not just because Gemma Arterton's in it, and one day she may become my future wife. Yeah. What about you?
I think I have a hard time. I have a hard time naming a book, or I'm sorry, a movie that's better than the book. I think the book is probably always better, because when you experience a book, it's in your own mind, and it's hard to outdo that. I mean, but as far as favorite adaptation, I think probably, it's probably a generic answer, but maybe Jurassic Park.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Michael Crichton. I remember, like, I was, once again, there's so much more information in the book about, like, just that kind of stuff. I was going to ask you, like, do you ever feel, if you've watched a movie that is based on the book, but then read the book, do you always have like the character, like the actor in your mind? When that's something that's always bugged me. Like, for example, say like Jurassic Park, like with what's his name, Dr. Malcolm, like Jeff Goldblum,
right?
Goldblum, yeah. Like, you can't see anyone else but Jeff Goldblum being Dr. Malcolm. Yeah, it's weird. That's why I always, because I like to kind of conjure up my own images of how a character represented. 1408, for example, the Stephen King one, which was a short story that he did, which is basically the kind of haunted room, house, hotel thing. John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson playing like 2 main characters and that kind of stuff. But when I first read it, like, it's that weird thing where you're doing your own kind of casting in your own head of like, who would you see as this person and all that kind of stuff. But when you've seen the movie and then come back to the novel and then read the novel, you can't help but see that person in the thing. And I think that's sometimes a bit of bit of mindfuckery.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And after Game of Thrones, the TV show ended, and yeah. So after that disaster,
The 8th season. Oh no.
Yeah, I've been wanting to read the books for a long time, and I thought, well, maybe it's time to read the books, and maybe it'll wash this bad taste in my mouth. And I just couldn't get into it because I kept seeing these same actors, and I needed some time some distance from it.
I did some back when the first series came out. I worked for Sky, and they actually had, as a promotion thing, they gave like pretty much everyone the book, and I got really into it. Yeah, but you know what? It's been so long now that I can't, because he hasn't even. The thing is, he still hasn't even finished. I can't even remember. I think there's 2 more books that are meant to come out, and one was meant to come out like 2 years ago, and he missed the deadline. And it was like, well, it's going to be done when it's done. It's like, okay, I get that, but I think the buzz now for that, like, it's going to be weird when that book does come out, because, well, people, you know what I mean? Like, will people be interested again? Because I think that kind of whole wave has been done now. I don't know.
He's in a no-win situation for sure.
Yeah.
No matter what he does, it's not going to be good enough. Now that the TV show ended the way it did.
That's it. Yeah. It's a shame as well that last series was so convoluted. Let's just put it that way. It's been polite, I guess, but
what a mess. What a mess. It's just such a shame. What a mess.
Yeah. Oh no. Bad. And you have the Starbucks. The Starbucks thing will always be there. The Starbucks cup. Yeah.
All just the weird things that happened. Even halfway through season 7, it just got really weird. You could tell when we got a bunch of dick jokes is when they ran out of material, and it became dick jokes and really ridiculous things.
Yeah.
So you could see the drop off in certain storylines towards the the middle of the 7th season. Things started to deteriorate and fall apart, and I thought, well, they'll pull the 8th season off. They'll find a way, and
no, it's an interesting concept though. Like, in terms of, like, as you said, like in terms of when you have source material that has all the like wording, and like you have to play around with it because you're making a mini series or whatever. So you're going to have to cut corners in terms of there's so much subtext, or there's so many characters in the book that don't even make it into the Game of Thrones series. But you kind of like sit back and go like, well, if you don't have that source material, and now you've just got, like, I'm not blaming the writers, kind of blame the writers, but like, you kind of like go like, well, where do you go, sort of thing, because it just went way off base, kind of thing. It's a shame, but
it's too bad. It's I don't envy him. He's George R.R. Martin is in a rough position.
Yeah. I hope he does finally manage to get the books out there, and just then it's done, kind of thing. And who knows, maybe they'll even do like a reboot. I don't know. Well, aren't they doing isn't there like a kind of prequel that they're going to be coming out with, a new series that's going to be like a prequel before the events of Game of Thrones? There's going to be like a whole going into the Targaryen sort of family and stuff like that as well. And
I think it's early next year or maybe summer next year. I think they're filming now, I believe.
Oh, what are your thoughts on the Tolkien, on the series coming on Amazon that's going to be coming out before whole Lord of the Rings type trilogy?
I guess. Well, I think it's funny that they spent more money on one season of this TV show than they did all 3 films put together. So, I'm sure there's a lot of people excited about it. I'd rather see something. There's so much great material out there that is just begging to be made.
Yeah.
Into a TV show or into a movie or anything, and I'm sure I'll probably end up giving it a watch, but I'd rather see something else. There's so much great material out there that just wants to be made that I'd rather see something new. And that is why Netflix, I do with Netflix, I know they cancel things fast sometimes, but at least they pump out a lot of original material.
Well, it was interesting because like you had the was it Jupiter Ascending? I don't know if you saw that, the one based on the graphic novel, and they made one series of it, clearly going for like a second series, and then cancel,
Yeah.
done. And it's that whole, I don't know how they do their algorithms in terms of like, you know, if it's rated well or not sort of thing, but it's a fascinating kind of concept in terms of like, you know, you have this kind of like, you have a series of something and then suddenly it's like, nah, we're not doing it. Like The Boys is another example. Like, you know, I know the third series will probably be coming out at some point next year or whatever sort of thing. I've been enjoying that, but
yeah. With I haven't seen Jupiter Ascending, but I think it was weird that it was like #1 on their list, and they canceled it the same week. I think the way they do it, from what I've seen, is that they go by they don't go by views or minutes. They go by subscriptions. So if they see subscriptions increase, then they renew things. I don't know how they tie in new subscriptions to certain. I'm sure there's some way that they connect it, but I think it's if more subscriptions, new subscriptions, subscribe to the platform.
There's obviously an amount that they need to kind of almost like box office type success. It's like if there's like XYZ amount of subscriptions, then you're good for another series kind of thing. It's such a weird way of doing it, I think. Crazy.
And it's really strange because they'll cancel something like Jupiter, and I didn't see it, but they canceled Jupiter Ascending when it was #1 on the charts. And these network TV shows that get canceled and end up on Netflix, and they save these weird TV shows that no one watched on network TV, and then they spend a bunch of money on. So
it's an odd one. I don't understand it, like sort of thing. There's talking about on, because I've got Amazon as well, sort of thing, and there's one 9 Perfect Strangers I'm starting to watch, kind of thing, based on the book. Nicole Kidman plays this kind of like there's this like retreat where like these characters go to kind of like better themselves, but there's like this kind of like weird undertone of like other things going on. I'm enjoying it so far. I think there's only like 3 or 4 episodes out at the moment, but what day is it today?
Today is the, let's see,
28th, 29th?
28th.
I think I think the next episode should be out, so I'll check that out this weekend. Sort of thing. So, but yeah, that's what I recommend at the moment. Not that you asked, but
always
any recommendations that you have? Anything you've seen recently, or
the last thing? Well, every month we have a little group that we do buddy reads, and we started doing this thing where every month. We would choose a TV show from Netflix and watch it, and then we come in, we talk about the series. The last one we did was Katla. It's Katla. The ice cat. Yeah, it's an Icelandic. It's filmed in Iceland. I think they speak. I forget the language, the official name, but it's a real place. There's a volcano that's on a glacier.
Okay.
And they built the story around it. It's like I think it's probably psychological horror. I think you'd call it. And have you seen Dark?
Dark, just Dark.
Dark on Netflix.
No.
Okay, as soon as we're done here,
you
have to go watch Dark.
Okay. Let me do a little quick check. Dark.
There's 3 seasons, and it's in. Don't do the dubbed. Don't do the English dubbing. Do the subtitles.
Okay.
So when they originally planned out the series, they knew it was going to be 3 seasons. So they plotted it 3 seasons, and it's over. We have a story we want to tell. So Jeff Lane, he's an author. He wrote One Way in the Champion Saga. We started talking, and he hadn't watched it, so we watched it together again, and we came and we would chat about each season. But it is just, I mean, fantastic. So Katla reminded me of that, and that kind of psychological horror. But Katla was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It was strained. It ended on like I don't want to say too much, but
I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, definitely, because I'm always on the lookout for like new things that or new TV series sort of thing that I can get into, sort of thing. So those both good recommendations. So definitely I'll check that out. Yeah. And
just a heads up, Katla it's a slow burn. There's some like halfway through the season, it can be a little slow, but so if you I know some people don't like the slower burns, but if that doesn't bother you, then
I love slow burns. Slow burns. Yeah, definitely.
Too. Yeah. And I think before that we watched what did we see before that? We watched my wife and I watched Black Summer. I don't know, it's the zombie show.
Did you watch the second series?
Yeah, we watched both.
What do you think of the second series?
It wasn't as good as the first.
Mm,
I think this. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first season I thought was pretty good. I think the second season lost a little bit of focus. I think it because I think the first season had there was a lot of different stories they were telling, but I think the main backbone was a mother trying to get back to her daughter.
Yeah.
And the second season it kind of meandered a little bit, and it was kind of just I don't really know how it was connected, but I do like that. I think it seemed, I don't call a zombie show realistic, but it seemed in that kind of situation, people wouldn't, or unless they were organized and trained, they wouldn't be really aggressive.
Yeah.
I think most people would be, really slick, and they would try to lure you in, find out what you have, and then take advantage of you. They wouldn't be really overt about it. They would be, they would take their time. They would be friendly, and you would see little signs that they're dangerous or what their intentions are. So I think that's probably what would happen if shit hit the fan the way it did in the show.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it was a bit weird because I love the kind of the narrative structure of how it's done. In the first series, for example, like, as you said, like there was a lot more characters, and so you'd be like, someone like if one sort of narrative ended, but then you saw another character. Like, I love that crisscrossing, juxtaposition sort of type of thing, if that makes sense. But in the second one, it was a bit more just kind of cutting away and cutting back, and as you said, like there didn't seem to be like, in the first one you have that mother trying to find her daughter type narrative angle going on, but with this one it was just like we're just trying to survive. And it's like I think it's like The Walking Dead. I don't know if you catch The Walking Dead or anything like that, but I got when Negan turned up and there was that whole like cliffhanger scenario with the baseball bat, and it was like that's when I kind of lost interest. I haven't really kind of picked up on it since then, and I don't mind that, so it's fine.
I used to love the comic, and that's why I really wanted to see the TV show, and the comic pulled that off so well.
Really, definitely.
And the show just after that, that's when I started losing interest too, and it just became the same thing over and over again.
It's like, how many times can you go from like a settlement, build it up, gets overrun, go to another settlement, build it up, gets overrun? It's like and
I think it got stuck in kind of the same thing Lost did when Lost was on TV. Is they saw that it was successful, and they said stretch, with this story that you can tell in 5 seasons, stretch it out to 15. So then it was like, that was a really disappointing thing with Lost. I mean, because it was so like novel at the time, this kind of like whole downed plane jet surviving on an island, smoke monster and everything. And then it just meandered its way through. Like, how many series? I can't remember even how many series. It was like 7 series or something, 8 series, 7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, it's like it should have been 5 at the most. And even today, like I suppose there's this kind of like, and this is for going back to writing and stuff like that. There's a Deus Ex Machina sort of thing where it turns up like, how do you when you've kind of painted yourself into a corner, how do you get out? And it's like, is it purgatory? Is it like, no, we're just gonna have these, once again they go with the good and the bad, like, we have this, was it Jacob and the guy, and it was like, oh, there's this literal plug in the, it's like, oh man, really? Is that what we're going with? Okay, right. But at the same time, it's like, you can't, how could they have done anything differently? Like, everyone was like, the forums were like, oh, it's purgatory, they're all dead anyway, aren't they, sort of thing. And it's like, no, we're just going to make it like this good versus bad thing. And I can't even remember how it ended.
I think they survived, but they all ended up
they had to be guardians
I think because they had gone through that experience, they all came back together in the afterlife, I guess, or something. But I think when you have a show like that, when you keep raising the stakes and you keep asking questions, it just builds and builds and builds, and then nothing will ever be satisfying because you have so many theories and so many things,
Well, it's funny,
so that's tough.
I mentioned like before about like with Marvel, for example, at the moment, and like in terms of like the build up of, right, for me, for example, I remember coming out of the cinema with my friends, and we were like, this was Endgame, and I came out and I was like, right, that's me done now for the Marvel sort of franchise, because they've, you know, you've got this, you've built up throughout the whole like 10 years or whatever it was of, like, you know, from Iron Man to Thor to even Incredible Hulk was like the original sort of thing, all that kind of stuff. But now you've had this like cosmic kind of like character, Thanos, who's like, you know, basically done the boop thing. And you know, now it's like, where do you go from there? Like, how do you raise the bar now? And like, you can see it now. And I mentioned before we recorded sort of thing about Spider-Man, watching the new Spider-Man trailer. Now you're introducing multiverses, and now you're introducing all these like cosmic elements that are like, so it's like, is it too much? Like, is it going a bit too kind of crazy now? I think, you know, Marvel, I think, saturated quite a while ago, and even with Disney Plus and with Loki and WandaVision and stuff like that, they're nice little caveats, but like at the same time, it's like, I think with Phase 4, it's like, kind of, what's the new one coming out?
Shang-Chi or something.
Shang-Chi, yeah. It's like, okay, you got like a father conflict thing going on there, but like, are you going to? Marvel's done for me now in that respect, in the kind of movie universe. It was great, don't get me wrong, like I enjoyed it, but yeah.
I checked out of the MCU around Iron Man. I was like, yeah. I could not stay awake during Captain America, the first one. There was a couple of like Thor Ragnarok, I thought was good. It was funny.
Yeah, I think Love and Thunder will be, because it's Taika Waititi. He's funny. Like, I mean, his direction is like, I appreciate what he did with Thor Ragnarok. Like, it was actually quite funny. But yeah, I think I'm done with that kind of whole thing now. It's time to move on to other things. So yeah.
I wish DC would get their crap together, because they have, you know, because I admire them for them taking chances like Joker.
Yeah,
Disney would never make a movie like Joker.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, it's really interesting, because like I remember when it was first announced that like we're doing this kind of like Travis Bickle taxi driver Joker story, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is gonna be shit," and it came out. It was like amazing. I don't think it warrants a sequel, though.
No, I don't think so either. And
I don't know. There's like this weird part of me of like, okay, yeah, it was a great success, but does it need a sequel? No. Yeah, they messed up royally with the whole Justice League thing. They were trying to do too much. They were trying to do what Marvel did, but in a less amount of time. And even with the Snyder Cut and everything like that, it's like, I mean, I watched that and I was like, I understand now why Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg, was pissed. I get that, because, you know, he's the heart of the story basically, and like his whole narrative structure was just like thrown out the window for the theatrical cut. So I understand like why he was upset. But also at the same time, it's like, you know, Snowpiercer, for example, like that was originally a graphic novel, and then was made into the movie with Chris Evans, and then was made into the Netflix series as well, which I really enjoyed. But like stuff like that, like I really enjoy those type of things. It's like, you know, you're taking this kind of concept of like, you know, the world is dead basically, and we're on this train that's just like going throughout the world. And it's the only kind of source of heat, and you know, there's a whole class element thing going on as well. And I think that's the reason why I kind of like Alien as well. Like, just going back to that, is because like, you know, on the Nostromo you have like this, you know, you have these decks, and you have like the kind of like, you know, the grease monkeys that are like Brett and Parker, and then you have like the warrant officers, and then you have like the science officers, and there's this whole hierarchy of things that you don't really see too much these days, which you know, I really wish that they sort of had that a bit more in certain movies and stuff. I think that's really interesting, because it's prevalent in today's society, sort of like in terms of, you know, people who work for, you know, bosses and stuff like that. And you always have that. I don't, you know, the job that I'm working in and stuff like that, you always go like, you know, you have bosses and stuff like this, and different bosses and different kind of people and stuff, and there's a mix and match of different personalities, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But like, it's interesting. It's nothing. It's not something you see much these days in terms of films and books and stuff.
Do you get that TPS report?
I'm going to need you to come in Saturday, okay? Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. It's it's a little too close to real life.
Yeah.
Great movie. Yeah, Mike Judge is great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned work. How do you balance your time between writing and your work? And is there do you dedicate time out of your day to write and to read? And
so I'm not. I know there's a lot of people that are very regimented. I'm not a regimented person. Like I was saying before, like in terms, sometimes there will be. I don't. So for example, some people are like, yeah, I write every day. That's cool. That's great. I don't write every day. Once again, I force myself sometimes to sit down and look at a blank screen and go, okay, I'm gonna do something. And whether it's a short story or just continuing on from something that I've done, I don't really have a regimented. There was actually a really interesting article that I read. A reporter, I think this was on the Independent or something like that. A reporter, she tried to mimic sort of household name writers' regimes. So, for example, I can't remember the authors that she quotes in this article, but like there's one that's like, get up at 5 a.m, go for a swim for an hour, come back, have some coffee, write continuously for like 3 hours, da 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 da. Then there's another one that's like, I wake up at 11. I kind of like, it's all scattergun, but she went through and like she basically gives her examples of which ones for her worked. And I think that's pretty much what the case is like whatever works for you. You could be one of those kind of people that wakes up at like 5 a.m. and likes, like if you have a family, if you have kids that are going to be up at a certain time and stuff like that, then you probably need to. I don't have any children myself, so in that respect I'm more freer, I guess, but also at the same time, as I said before, I'm a bit of a slug on the sofa type of thing, and I get distracted very easily, like a moth to the flame. So for me it's more the kind of case of I will try to, throughout the day, for example, when I'm working, and this, because I'm working from home at the moment because of obviously the pandemic and whatnot, if it's not particularly busy, then, I may be able to kind of write something. Also at the same time, because there's that added extra thing of like work being in the background, I can't really concentrate. So usually it's when the laptop goes down, it's like now I can focus. So then I'll probably try and get something written up. I'm one of those kind of people that's like, if I have a deadline for something, that I leave it to the last minute and then cram away. Yeah, no, I don't really have like a routine as such. I don't like wake up and go like, right, get the squash or tea or whatever sort of thing and sit down and write for an hour or two or whatever sort of thing. Which I probably need to change, in all honesty, because I think I'd be more productive if I did have a routine. That's my advice. Get a routine, guys. Get a routine. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. I think I need a routine. Yeah.
I like how your answer changed from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I just realized as I was saying it in myself, I was like, yeah, I don't really have a routine. I need to actually do this. I need to like settle on something. So yeah.
I didn't realize, but we're already at 2 hours. The time's just flown by. Yeah. So I wanted to say thanks again for coming by to chat, and it's been a great conversation. Anytime you want to come by, let me know.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been enjoying this. I love it, sort of thing. So definitely. Awesome stuff. And
when after the book releases, I'd love to have you back and chat about the book and do a spoiler-filled conversation if you'd be willing to.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm up for that. That would be great. That would be fantastic. And Steve, you've been awesome, man. Like this is really nice to be able to kind of just chat the fat, really. Just chat other things and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I've had a great time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to just basically ramble.
Yeah, no, that's what, when I first started doing this, I kind of was kind of like, well, it's fun and all, but I'm kind of bored with, so when I started chatting with people and having conversation, it's kind of it's kept me doing this. So this is what I really enjoy. This is my favorite part of doing YouTube stuff. Yeah, so it's just chewing the fat, but it's a great time.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
And maybe next time then I can talk to you about your collection behind you, and then you can talk to me about like your favorite ones and authors and stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. And we can chat movies and let me know when you start Dark or Katla. I'm curious.
Definitely. Yeah. I will.
I'm curious to hear what you think.
Okay.
But Dark is I won't say too much. It is it's just fantastic. It's really, really, really great. So
it's German, isn't it? That's what I just saw. Is it German? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And I reckon unless reading subtitles is really an annoyance for you,
I
suggest
have no problem with that. I think some foreign films are probably the best films. Parasite is one of the best films I once again watched last year, sort of thing. So I've got no problems with that. I don't mind. And you're reading as well. You're reading and you're watching. It's all good.
It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
But no, anytime you want to come by and we'll chat movies or books, or anytime you let me know and I'll make it happen.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Sounds good.
So birthday treat, October 5th is the release date. Can we pre-order? Is there a
so the ebooks currently you can pre-order the book on Amazon right now. I'm just sorting out the last few minute details of the paperback, but then that should be available as well. It'll be available early October.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have all the links down below for Storgy and for birthday treat. And so people can go and pre-order. I'm going to go pre-order my copy, and I'll be buying the paperback as well because I'm weird.
I'll send it to you. You don't have to buy it, man. I'll send it to you.
No, I like to have the.
You've given me this opportunity to do this, so that's the least I can do, man. So yeah.
No, I like to support your work, and it helps out. So yeah. But thanks again. It's been just a great time, and like I said, anytime you want to come back, let me know, and we'll make it happen.
Definitely, we'll do.
Now that we have the time zones figured out, we'll be good.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks, Steve. You've been great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody.
Bye.